Hi, my name is Claudia Voss Lewenstein. I've lived in Ithaca for the past 27 years. My family has been here. My children have been through the Ithaca City schools, and my parents moved here about 13 years ago in order to be near the family. So this is my mother, Ilse Voss, and we're going to talk a little bit about her life and experience before and after the Holocaust. So, Mom, why don't you give your name and your age and where you were born?
My age too?
Your year of birth, maybe.
Okay, my name is Ilse, Ilse Voss. I was born in Vienna, Austria, 1921, which means I'm 94 years old. I had a beautiful childhood. We did not live in the city of Vienna. We lived on the outskirts, which was about 25-minute bus ride in a smaller town, and I lived with of course, with my parents, and I had a brother who was 5 years younger than I was.
And what did your parents do?
My father had a store for electric appliances and anything to do with electricity, and a gas pump. Gas pump. And my mother helped him in the store and did the books and so on and so forth.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about school? What was it like going to school in those days?
Well, I started with 6 years elementary school. I did go to a higher school, and that's actually a 4-year school. Took the train every day back and forth, and I was there for 3 years, and then Hitler came. In March 1938, I was 17 years old. Hitler and the German troops marched into Austria, and people went crazy and yelled and screamed and were happy and
cheered,
that's the word. Mm-hmm. And the friends that I had, the Christian friends, just would not talk to me anymore. They just didn't want to be friends anymore. So it was a terrible, terrible shock for everybody. One day, a neighbor of ours lived across the street, came to my father, and he said, "This house isn't yours anymore. I took over. If you want to stay in it, you have to pay me rent." So
this was an Austrian Nazi, would
yes,
you say? Yeah,
a member
of the Nazi
real
party.
big shot in the Nazi party. And my father, what was he going to do? He had no choice. He said, okay. But that didn't last too long. One day he came and he said, "You have to leave this house right now. Just leave, everybody." So all we did is we took some clothes that we needed. Each one of us had a suitcase with some clothes. And he was standing outside with a lot of different SS men that were all watching and waiting for us to get out. So we got out, and our dog was very upset and saw what was going on. She rushed out of the house, and the car came and killed her. So that was a terrible, terrible experience for us. So we went out of the house, left the house, and there was at the synagogue, at the temple, there was an empty apartment because the rabbi had left with his family. So we moved into that, and we lived there. It was a terrible life. You had trouble buying food because they didn't want to sell to Jews. There was a special store that you had to go to, and it was just terrible. The 9th of November came. 1938, right. And
so that's Kristallnacht.
that's right. the Nazis came and went through our whole apartment and checked and looked, and they didn't find anything. And they said, okay, you better get out as soon as you can, pack, because we're going to put the temple on fire. And as he said it, somebody was already putting the temple on fire. So once again, we quickly packed our few things that we had. There was already lots of smoke, and we could see the fire, the flames. And we went out on the side, and as I walked by the entrance to the temple, I saw something shiny on the floor. And I ran in, and I took it. And this is a cup that was there, which is used for holidays, for wine, and for weddings. And I have it ever since, and it is really precious to have. If they would have seen what I did, I think they would have sent me to a concentration camp, because I took something that I shouldn't. But I didn't think of it. I just saw it, and I thought that's something to save. And so we were just thinking, what are we going to do? How are we going to get out of here? So we bought a British London newspaper and looked for jobs. And there was a job offering for a cook and a au pair for a child. And we wrote to them, and they wrote us back, yes, we want you. They sent us tickets, and my mother and I left in September 1939. The doctor wrote us a letter, and after we explained that we are a family of 4, and he wrote us back and said, we will try everything to get your brother and father out. But you come first, and then we'll see, we'll talk. We had to say goodbye to my father and my brother. So we got there. They were wonderful, wonderful people. And they promised again they would try everything to get papers for my father and brother. And my brother was put on a children transport, which they had for a group of Jewish children to bring out of the country. And he was on that children transport, supposed to come to London.
He was signed up for it.
Signed up for it, yes. And the day he was to leave, the war started, and that was the end of that. They were there and could not get out, and the end was that they were arrested, sent to concentration camps, and killed, both of them. They even sent my grandmother, who was 81 years old, to a concentration camp, and she died there. And most of my family, cousins and aunts and uncles.
Do you know how many people? I know you've...
No, I don't. It's so many.
So many.
So many, yes. And my mother and I we didn't know all this, of course, because it couldn't even correspond. So we had a good life with this doctor and his family. And one day in September, he said to me and to my mother, you know, you are so young. As much as we like you, as much as we appreciate you, I think you should leave and go to London and see what life is all about. And I was very happy. I didn't show it, but I was happy because I was really bored. There was nothing to do for me. We had friends there in London that we had met, and they found a place for us to live in London. And we moved into this boarding house, and that's where the Voss family lived, and that's where we met.
So, you want to describe how you met Dad?
Well, we moved in, my mother and I, and right away, the first day, I needed change for a £1 note. So I went downstairs and knocked on a door, any door I found, knocked on the door, and Fred's father opened the door and asked me, what can I do for you? And I said to him, would you change a £1 note? He said, sure, just come in and I'll be right back. And he was standing there, Fred was standing there and was looking me over, but I wasn't very interested at that time. And his father gave me the change, and I walked out upstairs. And he came after me and he said to me, how about, may I invite you to go out tonight? It's New Year's Eve. I said, no, I'm sorry, I'm already busy, which it was true. I had.
It wasn't just an excuse.
No, it wasn't an excuse. And then the next day he came and he knocked on our door again and he said, would you like to go for a walk? And I looked at him and I said, yeah, but I got to ask my mother. See, those days you asked your mother, it was a different life than today's life. And I asked my mother, she says, yeah, sure, go ahead, why not? So we went for a walk and told each other's life stories and clicked. We both were in love within a day or two, and it was just, we knew we were made for each other, and fate made us meet. And then Fred and his family left for the United States, and for 5 years we didn't see each other. And wrote a letter every day, which I still have, and I counted them. There were like about 1,000 letters.
When the war started, and where you were in London at the time?
Yes, we were living in London, and the war started September 1st, 1939.
So what was that like for you?
Within a couple of weeks, they started bombing London and England, and it was a terrible life. There were air raid sirens all day. First, we went down the basement to
Of your building?
In the building, yeah. And stayed there, and then it got worse. There was a bomb fell next door to us in the next house, and
Was anybody killed?
no, there was nobody there. Everybody was in a shelter. But the windows broke, and it was just very scary. So my mother and I decided, instead of going to the basement, we should go to the London Underground, which is very deep. And we did that for a few nights, and everybody else was there with a blanket, and you laid on the floor and you just spent the night there. And a week or so later, a bomb was exploded on top of the building, on top of the subway station. We heard it. Nothing happened down there. But we couldn't get out of the exit anymore, so we had to walk to the next exit on the tracks, to the next exit, and went out, and we said, that's it, we're staying home from now on. What's meant to be is meant to be. And we did, and thank God nothing happened, but it was a terrible life to live.
So tell us about your work life. What did you do?
I got a job with a very famous English fashion designer, and I was paid pretty well.
So you went to work every day?
Every day, yes, and made dresses. We had lots of friends. In spite of all the bombing and all that, we went, a few girls together, dancing. I mean, we were young, 18. So we went dancing and had a good time as far as that goes. I met some young men, and they all wanted to go out with me, but I said, no, I'm sorry, I'm engaged. I'm not going out with anybody. And I didn't. I was very good. There's another unbelievable story. One morning, I went by subway and got out of the subway and to work. I was waiting to cross the street. And as I stood there, a lorry with soldiers, American soldiers, came driving by, and I just looked, of course. I looked at it, and I thought I was dreaming. There was Fred standing at the edge of the truck with I don't know how many other soldiers, and we saw each other. And I thought it was a dream. I didn't believe it, but then we wrote to each other and we said, it's true, we saw each other. And then it took another year until he came home. He was on leave for 1 week, but I didn't know yet what day. And he and my mother went to the subway station to pick me up. I came from work. So I came up the subway station, and there he was with my mother, and I almost fainted. And we said hello to each other, and it's after an hour or so, it seemed like we've never been apart. It was just wonderful. And when Fred was on leave in London, we went to the American embassy, and I said I'd like to go to the US. So he said, well, right now there's a war on. So he said, okay, I promise you, when the war is over, you will leave England. The war was over, and I got right away a phone call to come to the embassy. I got my passport, I got my visa, and my mother and I left on a troop transport. I was the only girl on the whole ship. Had a good time. And
that was VE Day, right?
VE Day, right. Mm-hmm. And came to the United States. Fred's parents picked us up. And now I was in America, and Fred was in Europe. We changed. Before he was in America and I was in Europe.
So he was there with the army.
So he was there with the army, and it took another year. February 46, he came finally home, and we got married in May. And that was 69 years ago. Had a very happy life. We had a son and a daughter, 5 grandsons. And we're still here, and we're happy.
Can you tell us about going back to Vienna? Because I know you've been back since
yes,
you had to escape.
Once I was back. I had a weird feeling. I wasn't happy there. I was not happy there. It's a beautiful city and beautiful music, but I was just not happy. I can't even explain it, the feeling. And we did go to our former house. I went into the shop and introduced myself and said, this is the house where I was born and lived before Hitler. And it was a younger couple there. They had nothing to do with Hitler, but he was shocked, and he was afraid that I came to take the house back, I think. He was very nervous, very nervous. And I didn't have any, and I didn't want to do anything like it. I just wanted to see it, and he took us through the whole house. But the house changed a lot, and it was not the way it was when we lived there.
We have something coming up in the year 2015, which is the present, that actually harkens back to this story in those days.
That's right.
Do you want to tell?
Yes. There was somebody in Leasing, it's called, that little town, that got into touch with me and told me that they are putting down stones in front of homes where Jews used to live and where people got sent to concentration camps.
Memorial stones.
Memorial,
plaques.
right, right. So on June 13th, they will put down a stone for my father and brother in front of the house on the sidewalk, they put it. So that means everybody that walks by there will see the name. And it says they're born on such and such a date, both names, deported such a date, and murdered on such a date.
Do you have any thoughts for students that you want to leave them with in thinking about your life and the lessons you've learned and the things that have gone on?
Well, it has again to do with hate. Don't hate each other. Be good to each other, help each other, and love each other, because hate is the worst thing that can happen to anybody, and it has terrible tragedies and terrible things happening because of hate. Don't hate, love.